extensive process. In fact, a lot of this is accounted for by a very strong team I have in my office, Matt Sanger and Shavana Ross, who just keep everything on track and make sure that we're adhering to the timelines and the rigor and the consistency. I'm not going to go through this in detail again, but I'll get to some of the key points that I think are most relevant to at least discussing this overall. But you can see, I'll point out one thing, you can see how long the process is. And one point I do want to make is that you'll see through the process, we don't just go through the whole process and then wait to the end and then synthesize it. There is back and forth input all along the process, meaning multiple debriefs and opportunities to dig into and do more due diligence through the process. So just to frame it in terms of the overall last few years, going back from September of 2022, there were 12 searches completed. And I'm not going to get into them all in detail, but you can see colleges like the College of Public Health, the College of Medicine, the College of Design, the Martin Gatton College of Agriculture, Food and Environment, and the College of Education. I think I have almost all those deans back there. There are multiple deans, including those deans and some additional ones. Arts and Sciences was right before this. And I can tell you, over the last 5 years as provost, they become more and more a collegial, collaborative group and are contributing to the growth you see here at the University of Kentucky. What I will highlight is the Rosenberg College of Law search, the search 3 as you see there, and the College of Health Sciences. So because those were recently completed. And then also of note is the College of Nursing and the Lewis Honors College, where the process is ongoing right as we speak. This table aligns with that other table, and I'm not going to go through every single point, but it gives you at least a framework to see in stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and stage 4, which was on the prior table. It all aligns. What I will do is call your attention to stage 3. That's where we get a lot of input, and the input comes from multiple groups. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Screening, a screening process. Actually, the screening is by a search advisory committee. I don't get involved with that. They review applications out there, see what's appropriate to go to that first phase where they do some initial meetings with a group of candidates. So they take the larger group, they bring it down to a smaller group so that they can interview in that first phase. Then offsite. I'll talk about that in a moment as well. We used to call them airport interviews. It's not always easy to get everybody to an airport, so we do it offsite. Again, so it's confidential for any of the candidates, out of respect for them and their institutions, because it's when they come on campus it becomes public and public to their institutions. And that's that last part of that stage 3. So you could say phase 1, 2, and 3 within stage 3. I know it sounds complicated, but it is a process, and we keep with it. I'm going to talk first about health sciences for a moment. And we think about health sciences, again, looking at stage 1 and 2, which is on the left, and stage 3, which I'll spend just a little bit more time, and then I'll spend even a little more time when I talk about the Rosenberg College of Law. But stage 1 and 2, organization and recruitment, there is a whole process there. We have to form a search advisory committee. That search advisory committee, we pay a lot of attention, and I'd say strongly so, to be sure there is adequate representation from multiple groups. Faculty, even a faculty senator that's representing the faculty senate, so that we could be assured that there's at least representation from the body that represents faculty across the campus. You can see there, 11 faculty, 18 total members, 2 co-chairs, the college faculty 8, and then 2 others, faculty at large that are there. 2 staff, 2 students, and an alum. Anyway, we charge the search advisory committee. As I just mentioned, they do the screening process. If you flip over to the right side of the table, stage 3, they screen. They decide of all the applications, who merits going forward, understanding what we're looking for, understanding the charge. There were 10 candidates, and the only other thing I'll point out is there are a lot of debriefs. I then meet with them. I want to hear what they've concluded to come up with the 10 and what they think about the 10. I go around the room, I make sure every single one has voice. We do this for every single search. We've done it for all 12 I just mentioned a moment ago. Then we select a group. I have to make the final decision with their input. We select a group. that goes off-site. Off-site interviews with a smaller group, again, a debrief with that team. Then select a smaller group, in this case 3 candidates that come on campus, and it's extensive. I mean, they meet with the president, they meet with myself again, they meet with the president's cabinet, they meet with deans and associate provosts, they meet with college leadership, college faculty, staff, students, on and on. They also meet with the search advisory committee again, because that group was set up so that they had balance in terms of representation, and I keep coming back to them. And in fact, when I review feedback, you can see they debrief again. Now that particular candidate, each one of the 3, went through the whole process, and I get input from them again to kind of get an idea. Go around the room. We get Qualtrics input from all of those different meetings. Everybody has an opportunity. And the public forum allows for an opportunity for anyone to give input. Qualtrics, Mints report, reference checks, social media checks. I do meet and review with the president. I give a recommendation, and then we move forward with an offer with the priority candidate. Rosenberg College of Law, same thing in terms of process. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Actually point out again, stage 3, screening phase, an off-site phase, an on-campus phase. And then when you look at it, this one looks a little more complicated, but not really. I mean, it's the same thing, but I'll make a few points. One of the things that, in fact, let me just turn this way here, so to kind of make some points here. Search Advisory Committee, 14 members, 7 faculty, so half were faculty, 2 co-chairs, staff, students, alumni. College faculty, 5, a faculty senator who is also college faculty, and then another member of faculty at large. Charge the committee. They do all the review. They choose from the applications candidates to interview. This first screening process, 14 candidates. What do? I debrief with them. I made the point before that it isn't that we just wait till the end. Get input ongoing, making sure if there are issues of concern, we can do due diligence even along the process, because obviously it's a long process. Off-site interviews. Obviously, with 7 candidates, I debrief with them. Then candidates come forward. I even debrief with the search advisory committee again here. On-campus interviews, 4 candidates. Again, all the meetings, president, provost, cabinet. And then all of the college components or people, that's just groups. College leadership, college executive committee, college faculty, staff, and students, college visiting committee. This is important. We talk about the college visiting committee. They are advisory to the dean. That group, prominent alumni, prominent attorneys, judges, leadership throughout the state. And the dean relies on them for advice to understand what we need to be doing in the College of Law for Kentucky and how we need to shape it. So I take that very seriously as well, because they have a perspective of what's going on in the state. Then we go to the public forum. And again, the public forum, it's videoed. Anyone can pull that off of the website. They can pull it off, or at least anyone here at the institution can pull it off the website and review it even if they couldn't be there in person. And it's open, so people can attend. Anyone can attend. All of this, in all these groups, can give feedback. And then what I do, after this is all done, is I meet again with the search advisory committee. I sit down, do the same thing. I've met with them multiple times and say, okay, let's go around the room. Do you notice anything different? Did you learn something through the process that you saw that was different from when you first screened them at the very beginning, when you think about that? When you go through this process and you do the search advisory committee, sometimes things come up. And if that's the case, I think about whether or not I have to do more due diligence. And I'll talk about that in a moment. But we go through all the different reports, reference checks, social media checks. And what I did is I saw and heard that there were some concerns about the 4th candidate. So that's Judge Van Tatenham. And the concern was that he's not an academic, and whether or not it might be an issue with the ABA, and whether or not it might be an issue if we were trying to seek tenure for him. Okay? And so that was a question. And so what did I do? I wanted to be sure, because I was hearing a lot of positive about his executive leadership experience, about his understanding of the state and the needs, mentorship of law clerks, and so on, and even managing budgets and so forth, and especially that he had the ability to understand externally, connect with those externally, and be able to raise money into fundraising as well to help support the college. So a lot of positives amongst that. I know there's a focus in terms of the ABA, and I'm going to get to that. So what did I do? I called faculty. And I'm not going to name faculty out of respect to them, but I called more than 10 faculty. By the way, there's only about 30 faculty in the College of Law, and we need to grow that, I get it. But nonetheless, I called a significant number of faculty because I wanted to understand, are we missing something? Is it the worry about the ABA, or is there something else? And where were they at? And I wanted to also glean whether or not they would support the fourth candidate, which is, again, Judge Van Tatenhoff. And I had them go through all the candidates if he was the one that was moved forward as the finalist. So I just wanted to be sure and did that in terms of extra due diligence, and would do that for any single dean search if I gleaned some things that we needed to do or pay attention to in the process. Obviously, then putting all that together, the president and I reviewed, took a look at it, I made recommendations, and I'll get to it, but I felt with total confidence, given the current time, and I mentioned it earlier, in the moment, and I'll talk about that, in the moment, we're in extraordinary circumstances, and I'll get to that in a moment. And I think it's really important thinking about the judge's skill set for the future of the College of Law. So just to take a look at it. So ABA, that's what came up. The concern was, could he get tenure? Okay, is he academic enough to get tenure? I put in bold the three areas, and again, to make it easier, I'll point to it, the three areas that came up of potential concern when I did that extra due diligence. One was, per the ABA Standard 203, except in extraordinary circumstances, a dean shall also hold appointment as a member of the faculty with tenure. So I talked to all the candidates. I talked about their position. When I talked to the judge, he said, I don't need to request tenure. I'm not requesting tenure. Okay? I don't need to do that. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to lead, passionate about the school, and I'm here to be an administrator and a leader. So tenure may not, at that point I'm thinking, all right, well, tenure may not be an issue, but then again, what's the question about extraordinary circumstances? I'll go through why I'm confident that we meet that clause. The second thing was meaningful involvement by the faculty. Hopefully you believe, because I already showed you, with confidence, there was meaningful involvement and input. Okay? Now, sometimes people agree, sometimes they don't agree, but they had input, and every bit of input was considered very seriously, including enough that when there were some concerns, we even did more due diligence in the process to really sort it out to make sure that we were addressing everything that we were hearing, and I was hearing. And then the last was, except for good cause, a dean should not be appointed or reappointed to a new term over the stated objection of a substantial majority of the faculty. So prior to the appointment, I got a letter. I won't name them, and they can, might be able to figure it out, I'm not sure, and it was out there in the press to some degree. Two faculty members sent a letter, and the letter stated that they had concern by a substantial majority with an informal meeting. Okay, it was an informal meeting, but nonetheless, said it was a substantial majority. But what they cited was the same things that I was hearing, and actually that letter came before I did the due diligence with all the calls to be sure that I felt comfortable that we were in extraordinary circumstances and we met the ABA standard in terms of that. And so their concerns were addressed, and I'll share with you at least some of them. So it really came down to extraordinary circumstances and except for good cause as part of the ABA standard. I can tell you, right now, it's extraordinary circumstances for higher ed. I think you all know that. There are a lot of pressures. Some of this I'm relating directly to the College of Law, but it's overall, and we need to be thinking differently in many cases. Budgetary pressures, rising costs. I can tell you, College of Law is dependent on general funds, in fact, increasing general funds that we've needed to add over the years. Scholarship dollars, and there's also still building debt. So additional budgetary pressures, we expect that there'll be more budgetary pressures. And I think you know that the general funds we receive at the University of Kentucky have not gone up. If anything, they've gone down. We don't expect them to go up. We need to prepare. Enrollment and workforce alignment. You hear all the time the importance of paying attention to the workforce. What are we going to do to help our students with all the new things that are coming out and pay attention to aligning the workforce needs with what we build programmatically. So clearly a candidate that had the best perspective of the workforce needs ranked high, in my opinion, through the process. Needs a vision for new programs. We need to do more of that. And we need to do it rapidly. Graduate programs, online programs, cross-disciplinary collaboration. I mentioned the deans that are in the back of the room. We are working hard and they are working hard to collaborate so that programs are more crafted for students related to workforce needs. If we don't do that, the pressures we have in higher ed are going to continue to mount, and we're not going to be equipped to deal with it. So I think it's really important, especially someone who has the executive skills, to bring people together and navigate that. Those are executive skills, okay? Academic skills, but executive skills. AI and legal technology. Where is AI fitting in the real world? We're going to need to address that. Workforce pipeline and mentoring. Okay? Mentoring students for the workforce. What's out there, an understanding of the workforce, and then bring that back, perhaps in additional competencies. And then external fundraising. Put that last because it's important, because we also put budgetary pressure first, but with an understanding that it's going to be important and more important going forward to bring in funds to support the scholarship of our faculty, the students and the programs that we have for them, new programs, and recruitment, retention, all the things that are so important to the faculty. And I think, there we go. And then at the bottom, conditions demand the leadership experience in navigating change and external complexity. No question. So meaningful involvement of the faculty. I probably don't need to go through this because we just talked about it, but as you saw on the prior slide, faculty participated through all these different forums, certainly the Search Advisory Committee, College Leadership Executive Committee, town halls, on-campus meeting, and Qualtrics. Every comment was considered seriously, taken into consideration, and where there were concerns, due diligence to at least address those concerns. Engage in intentional conversations, I mentioned that a moment ago. And then when the announcement was going to be made, out of respect to the college, I went and held a town hall to let them know about the announcement. And some of them said, well, that's not the person we would have selected. I get that. Okay, some of them raised their hand and talked about that. It still bared on the same things that I had already done due diligence on, worried about the ABA, worried about tenure. Well, it's not going for tenure, and we've addressed the ABA in terms of where we're at in the College of Law and extraordinary circumstances. But I did ask the question, if he coming forward as your dean, are you going to get behind him? And multiple people raised their hand and agreed. The other thing I want to say, and just finishing up here, is this is not without precedent. Other institutions have successfully appointed similarly experienced leaders as deans. David Levy is an example. 14th Dean of the Duke College of Law noted that his experience as a federal judge prepared him well for the role. So he was dean for a while, very successful in terms of increasing the reputation, increasing enrollment, increasing fundraising at Duke. And I'm going to actually have it here. I just wanted to cite a couple things. I have the quote. But what he noted, and he's published it, in terms of how the experience of a federal district judge equips someone, and we've been calling them more and more, by the way, durability skills. So we used to call it soft skills and stuff like that? Not soft skills. Please don't go soft skills. Not soft. Durability skills, the kind of skills needed at the executive leadership level, and I'm seeing it more and more, the need for our deans to be able to do that. Executive leadership skills, durability skills. And he notes multiple durability skills such as trusting in the process, even creating a process, valuing open-minded civil debates, radiating the values of the institution, mentoring new lawyers as law clerks, etc., but understanding the workforce needs. So, and bringing together people, managing people, and I'll talk a little bit more about the fact that Judge Van Tatenhoven also has an incredible amount of budgetary experience and management experience of large numbers of people. The quote, though, that was actually cited in one of the publications that David Levy had was, in some important sense, becoming a dean was exactly what I had been trained to do by being a judge for some 17 years. So he was a judge 17 to 20 years. Judge Van Tatenhoven was a judge for approximately 20 years. So we just wanted to go through and finish up with a couple points. I can tell you we have a consistent process. It was rigorous, consistent, compliant. Okay? The established process was followed with meaningful faculty involvement and meaningful involvement by many other groups, including a very prominent advisory group that has an understanding of the state, fully compliant with the ABA Standard 203. The decision reflects the moment the institution and the college is in. Financial, workforce, technological, reputational pressures place the college at a critical inflection point. So the durability skills and inflection point, I think, are key here when we think about in the moment, requiring forward-looking leadership. Extraordinary circumstances were evaluated and met. Conditions facing higher education and this college fall squarely within the ABA's extraordinary circumstances framework. And the leadership, as I already mentioned a moment ago, in terms of this candidate, judgment, ethics, institutional leadership, and external engagement to support long-term sustainability, strong executive leadership experience, including managing budgets, even personnel, as U.S. attorney, not only federal judge, but prior U.S. attorney, national reputation, and I can tell you, deeply loyal. I did get to talk to him at times, deeply loyal to the Commonwealth and his alma mater. Experience mentoring students with an understanding of workforce needs. And so before I get to questions, I just wanted to do one more thing, if I could share, just to summarize. We followed our established process. We honored meaningful faculty involvement, including many other groups that were involved, had to synthesize all of that to make a decision with good intention for the College of Law, and we're confident about it. We compiled, we compiled all that, made sure that we were in line with accreditation standards, and certainly the decision reflects, as I mentioned before, the moment the institution's in and the moment the college is in. It reflects careful judgment, not a departure from standards. And ultimately, this leadership decision supports students, it supports faculty. It supports faculty success as well as student success, public service, and Kentucky's legal workforce. And the last thing I'd like to do is I want to just pause a moment and recognize the two incoming deans. Dr. Philip Gribble as Dean for the College of Health Sciences. I'll have you stand, and Judge Greg Van Tatenhoven as Dean for the J. David Rosenberg College of Law. If you could please stand. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Provost. I had a couple of questions on the way in here, but you answered them very succinctly. I know you've gone over before the search protocol and how you go through that and who's included and how serious it's all taken. But you know, we all are affected by the media and what we read and hear. And coming in here, I had some questions. There seemed to be a lot of negative faculty input for the judge, and I'd just like you to kind of go through that. I mean, you went through how much input you got, but you know, could you elaborate a little more? And I'm sure he'll be given great opportunity to meet with those people and gain their trust.
Yeah, Chair Boone, absolutely. I appreciate the question actually very much. You know, as I mentioned before, we get that input. We pay attention to that, but take it seriously. I do think that as a very professional faculty, as best I can tell, they'll get on board with their new dean. They'll support their new dean. Whether or not some selected or not, I think that his executive leadership experience, I think that his experiences which will add value to things we might not even be thinking about in terms of where the College of Law needs to go to grow. I think his effort, and I've talked to him a number of times, his effort to be really clear that he's trying to figure out how to support more scholarship, academic scholarship within the college, more opportunities for recruitment and retention, and opportunities for students. That'll help grow the college. That'll strengthen everything for the faculty. And yes, there are some that have concern right now. I know that he's been meeting with the faculty, so he's actually been getting out to meet with the faculty and the college. And I know his intention. He actually said to me, he is going to meet. He said, I'm going to meet with every single member of that college, faculty and staff. I'm going to understand what they need. I'm going to understand what they do. I'm going to make sure make sure that I figure out how to support them, how to grow things, and then bring new opportunities as well. So I think it's just going to take that time. I'm confident that it'll work. I think it's going to take time. I think the faculty will see that over time as well.
Thank you very much. Any other questions of Provost Apollo? Trustee WLEX.
Thank you. Being a graduate of the College of Law myself, I take pride in your presentation, Dr. Apollo. It seems like the selection of the new dean is kind of an outside-of-the-box selection. And based on your presentation, being all the concern with the College of Law, it seems like to me that this is going to give the College of Law a fresh perspective on things. And, I think time will tell us this has proven to be a wise choice. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any Trustee Meyer?
Thank you. We've all seen a lot of the statements from politicians this week about the law dean's appointment, both in favor but also questioning the process that we've gone through. What is your strategy to safeguard other colleges here at UK from partisan or outlying and outside influence?
No, it's a great question. I think the process, anything, we can always look at the process and say, do we need to tweak this or tweak that? But it's a solid process, and it is not, and has not been influenced by outside influence in terms of, even the Search Advisory Committee, as this committee working on its own, I step back when they review those initial applications before they move that first slate forward to the next phase, and be sure that they're looking at their merit, they're looking at opportunities for the college, and connecting regularly through the process. I think the process itself is solid. Not to say we don't always listen to ways to improve, but this is work now for, you just saw 12 searches. I think many of the deans that are out there on the tables behind you, solid deans. I'm very excited, especially for some of the new deans, as well as those that have been here before. So I don't want to ignore you all as well. But I think the process is solid to do everything possible to avoid some sort of outside influence, because we're getting multiple groups coming together for the sake of one purpose, and that is to hire a leader that is best for our faculty as well as our students as well as the state.
Could you please articulate how these extraordinary circumstances were communicated with all of the candidates?
Trustee Swanson, if I understood you're asking how we communicated with extraordinary circumstances with all the candidates?
So what you're describing is that the college is currently under extraordinary circumstances, and that is the reason why we're going outside the ABA requirements. And so to have that extraordinary circumstances applied, it seems like a fair process would have articulated that extraordinary circumstances to all of the people who applied.
Well, no, appreciate that question. And first off, I would say that we are not going out of the ABA standards, because there were extraordinary circumstances, and that is part of the ABA standards. I highlighted on one of the slides what were extraordinary circumstances, and yes, as candidates come through and I have discussions with them, I talk about the pressures, whether they be budgetary pressures, whether they be external pressures, talk extensively about the need to go in a bit of a different direction in regard to developing new programs, developing new opportunities, thinking more about workforce and the pressures on that as well. So I do think it's communicated. Now, we don't share confidential information of one candidate to another candidate in some of those discussions, but I think it's well explained, and I think most candidates have an understanding of the strain, the external strain imposed on colleges of law these days in terms of needing to think differently in many respects, at the same time valuing what we do in terms of scholarship, in terms of students, outcomes, reputation, and all the things that they value and we value. But thank you for the question.
Trustee Williams?
Yes. Going back to the interpretation of ABA, I understand 2031, that interpretation, where it says, except for good cause, the dean should not be appointed or reappointed to a new term over the stated objection of a substantial majority of the faculty, which you highlighted. With this process, which you have described in great detail, are you able then to quantify whether the appointment is being made over a minority, majority, or a substantial majority of the faculty?
The only thing I have, sir, is, like I said, an informal letter that a meeting had occurred and that the two authors felt that there was a substantial majority that didn't consider that candidate acceptable. And the language in there stated that it was based on the concerns about getting tenure. We talked about the fact that he's not even requesting tenure in the ABA. We felt that we met ABA standards. It is an extraordinary time. It is an extraordinary situation. And from all the reasons I said, there's one slide there that I can go back to as well, in terms of the strain that we have on higher ed and the strain that we have, particularly our college law at this point, at this inflection point. Does that answer that, sir?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Trustee Fair?
So back to the ABA then, do you feel that this appointment will cause any problems with the ABA?
I mean, I can't speak for the ABA. I'm not on the ABA, but I did, when I did due diligence calls, even one member who had a real understanding of the ABA felt that we are in extraordinary times, extraordinary circumstances, you know, and yeah, I mean, I feel confident, but you know, I can't speak for the ABA.
Trustee Williams?
Just in light of the extraordinary times, extraordinary circumstances, given the fact that, is there anything unique about these extraordinary times and extraordinary circumstances as you see it that pertain to UK Law School?
Yeah, absolutely. UK Law School right now, you know, I mean, you could say they have a stable budget, but we've had to, and we're helpful, we're trying to be as helpful as possible. We had to actually add some general fund dollars to kind of help keep it supported. We had to add scholarship dollars to keep it supported. Communicate with the interim dean right now to try to do everything possible so that they can review the applications that come in and bring in high quality students. So I would say it's very strong in terms of a college, but we're at a tipping point because there's got to be something else that takes it to that next level to infuse it with more support, and that support translates to an opportunity for more students, it translates to an opportunity for more faculty, it translates to actually support faculty to do the scholarship they do. Scholarship, by the way, not to get into this in too detail, scholarship related from the College of Law, there are forms that many of you know that look at the impact of the scholarship that they have coming out of the College of Law. I know that Judge Van Tatenhove intends to get the support so that can increase, not decrease, increase, so that the college's academic activity actually even has more impact. So I do think from a budgetary perspective, and then the other thing is, right now, our College of Law is mainly focused on the JD program. High quality, it really is. But if you look at colleges around the country, it is a sea change, it is a change to all of a sudden get into the business of other areas of education that pay attention to workforce needs. Law with health, educating more healthcare workers in terms of law and programs related, law with business, law with policy, partnerships between different colleges, partnerships between the College of Law and Martin School. There's some of that now, but if we're going to grow and sustain at this point where I think it's fragile, but I think that Judge Van Tatenhove can actually get us to that next level. It is a change. Because what we're saying is not only a JD program, increase the quality there, get support to increase the faculty, get support to increase the quality and the scholarship, but then also move fast to develop new programs and add value to so many other learners that are in other programs, master's degrees and so forth. I think we're going to need to go there. And if you're just asking about specifics of our College of Law, those are two areas that are critical. And right now, I can tell you, if it doesn't move in that direction, we're going to get passed by because other colleges are doing it. But it is a change. And I think change is important, and it's going to take it to a next level. We have a great college. Okay, the J. David Rosenberg College of Law is impressive, but it is at a tipping point or an inflection point.
Trustee Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, first things first, Provost, thank you for your comments and your background on this. And I also want to say right out of the gate that I don't know anyone who is more pleasant and more professional than Judge Greg Van Tatenhove. Say that right out of the gate. And I'm glad he's here today so he can hear me say that. Now that said, I think there are questions, and some of these questions are being presented. A few questions that I have is, and it relates to what Trustee Swanson had to say, in terms of the issue of extraordinary circumstances. And what makes this moment so different? And how did we get into this position? How did we have 3 failed searches? If the college is in a great position, which you said on one hand, but in a very dire position or pivotal position on the other, that we are here. And then my question is related to the job posting. The job posting talks about, the job posting for this position talks about past experience, past management experience, past collaborative management and leadership experience in specific roles. And those are not being met here.
Those are not, I'm sorry.
Those are not being met. Those requirements in the job posting. Now I understand maybe your point of view changed as you went through the process, but those requirements were generally consistent with the ABA Standard 203, as I read it, in terms of academic credentials, direction toward a full professorship. And so, with those 2 standards in mind, when did the point of view change on the criteria for selection?
Thank you for the questions. And I'm hearing 2 questions. One is, why am I saying this is an inflection point? But I would say the fact that we needed 3 searches even speaks to that a bit. So there's concern out there. Even that puts us in an extraordinary circumstance right now, because we need a permanent dean that's going to move the college. Now, I'll finish with a couple more things. The budget, we're running it. I mentioned before, high quality, and one of the things that we're charged to do as a leader, administrator and a leader, I'm a faculty with tenure. I have a lot of administrative experience. I know like 3 decades or something, so I won't give it my age or anything like that. But when you think about the future, if we don't move it further, meaning support coming from external support in some way, or new programs. New programs allow for growth as well in different ways. It's going to require executive leadership skills to bring all that together. It's going to require an external outlooking dean. We have some deans that pay a lot of attention to looking externally as well as internally, growing internally, but then also making those connections so that we can actually continue to fundraise to support things. I would say right now, the budget is stuck. It's fragile. It's moving. We got high quality, but it's fragile. So some of this is seeing where things are going in the world, pressures on higher ed, pressures by industry and all sorts of industry, looking for additional workforce skills and the understanding of that. And the fact that we don't have a portfolio of these other programs. In that respect, I think we're behind, but yet have an opportunity. So that's going to require somebody to kind of get in there and make change, but do it with support. In terms of the question about did something evolve in terms of how we initially would have brought out these are the charge. This is the kind of candidates we're looking for. I wouldn't say it necessarily changed, but we were pleasantly surprised that we had such a candidate that had interest, and I would say more than equivalent executive leadership skills to meet some of those requirements. And the other thing is I also had an independent search advisory committee that went through that first phase. They understood the charge, but they also, I think rightly so, chose, when they looked at all the applications, independent of me, to bring a select group of candidates to the next phase to do the interviews. And he was endorsed to do that. Okay? Then I start getting input from them. So, to the best of my ability, with good intention, the greatest intention, I think we did everything we could, number one, to pay attention to the extraordinary circumstances that we're in. And some of it is predicting where we need to go in the future and where that college is right now. Needs more programs, great JV program, needs more programs. In truth, we know, when you think about the University of Kentucky, and we say it here a lot, if we don't grow, meaning, and we're growing not just for growing's sake, we're growing because we want to give more students opportunities, we want to raise social mobility. If we don't grow, we go in the other direction. And the College of Law right now is an inflection point. We're seeing growth in a lot of the other colleges. It has the opportunity to go further. It's going to need support. It's going to need ways to be able to recruit more faculty. We can recruit more now. We're going to need to recruit even more. It's going to need more of that. And I think we're at a point now, if we don't do that, we're going to start seeing, right now, we see a little bit of plateau and we're going to go in the other direction. And the last thing I'll mention too is, even though we have a stable budget, I mentioned it earlier as well, we're doing that by supplementing things. Supplementing from some of the general funds. That's actually coming from even the undergraduate budget to some degree. And that's only so, can be sustained so long. So again, with the best of intentions, yes, you made the point, this candidate is not your typical candidate, but I do think is an extraordinary candidate. We've been talking about an extraordinary situation. We did have an extraordinary candidate. So yes, our mind changed in terms of how we were thinking, Trustee Gray, but I would say still met the spirit of and equivalent executive leadership skills as we initially discussed and initially charged.
So just a couple follow-up questions. One is, you explained the notion of durability that is today taking the spot of soft skills. Understand that and respect that. So that skill set supersedes the requirements of academic credentials that the ABA standard 203 calls for and the job posting called for, which was not. That word, of course, was not in either of them. That doesn't surprise me necessarily, but it is a question. And then my second question is, of the three other candidates, did their credentials follow the guidelines or the standards and the job posting?
I think Judge Van Tatenhose did as well, just in terms of being equivalent to satisfy the standards. So I think that's the case. And I would not say that those durability skills, executive leadership skills, supersede academic strengths and academic skills. And keep in mind too, and you know this as well, anyone who takes on a role like dean. I was dean with over 1,000 faculty. Okay, I came from as cancer center director, took care of cancer patients and all that. I think before that, I actually ran a center that's bigger than Markey. So I've seen this in a number of different ways, on the academic end, the academic skill end, and the executive leadership end. I wouldn't say it supersedes it, but there's also a learning curve. David Levy got in there with very analogous skills and learned and understood over time the importance and the value of scholarship, and academic leadership. And I think the skills, these durability skills, are transferable in many different ways. And we go through them one by one. So I wouldn't say it supersedes, but any one of us taking on a leadership role doesn't have everything from day one. We have expertise in a certain area. Some of it we have a learning curve. But those that are equipped, I would say this, those that are better equipped with strong durability skills that have been honed and tested in complex situations on the battlefield, so to speak, I think are more equipped to make those changes and really excel at that learning curve. Thank you.
Is Provost Apollo answered everyone's questions? Thank you all very much, and thank you, Dr. Apollo.
And I do thank you all.
And I think we have some, I'll call it new old business. If Trustee Swanson and Trustee Patron would like to describe to Mr. Throw exactly what we thought we'd done but hadn't done yet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We want to follow up on what we had discussed at the December meeting, only I'm going to make it more formal this time. I'd like to make a motion that the provost provide an update on UK frame on the faculty evaluation, and that would include the metrics and the processes, and that should be presented at our June 2026 meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say so by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.